Welcome to the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. I'm your host, Hannah O'Brien, both a veteran spouse and the program manager for the Veteran Spouse Network. On each episode of our show, I will host different guests to learn more about the stories, unmet needs, and resources available to our military and veteran families. We're the show that's making space for your stories, so that here you know you're never alone. Welcome back to the Veteran Spouse Network podcast. We hear about it all the time, military spouse employment, or rather unemployment or underemployment. It's a problem and it causes challenges not just for the spouse, but for their entire family. Unemployment rates for military spouses hover around 22%, which is 8 times higher than civilian spouse unemployment rates. And that doesn't even take into account underemployment, which many spouses face. And I bet it's common for spouses to think, okay, as soon as my service member gets out of the military, I can get my career back on track. But it's really not that simple. Transition is hard. There's no use beating around the bush on that one. And veteran spouse employment rates don't fare much better. While a lot of initiatives and programs address military spouse employment, we haven't seen a big change. And when it comes to transitioning from military to veteran family life, spouses are uniquely positioned to finally shout the "it's my turn" battle cry. And that is why I'm so grateful to have Rachelle Chapman as my guest today to talk about her "It's My Turn" veteran military spouse career program. In addition to being the brains behind this program, Rachelle is a longtime military spouse who joined the veteran spouse community a few years back. This mission is personal to her. She's living it. So Rachelle, I would love to turn it over to you to tell our listeners a little bit more about just yourself, but also your role within the Adecco Group and the It's My Turn program.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. The first thing I have to say is you might have one of the best podcast voices I've ever heard. Like, two words in, I was like, oh, she's a professional. She knows what she's doing.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today to address your community and just talk about one of the programs I'm working on that has been really exciting for me this past year. I guess to start just a little bit with who I am, you mentioned it already as far as tying myself to your community. Yes, I am a veteran military spouse. Mm-hmm. My husband joined the Navy after leaving the corporate world about 2 months after 9/11. Like so many of us, he was watching those towers fall from home and said, there's something that I feel called to do something about this. And December 1st, 2001, signed his letter and joined the Navy. And our life, of course, has not been the same since. When he joined, I don't think he ever thought he would stay in the Navy for 20 years, but somehow a couple of decades flew by. We kind of always said, Hannah, I think this probably is going to resonate with some of your folks, that we would continue to serve on active duty until it didn't make sense for our family. And it really kind of started to not make sense for our kids the older that they got. And so a few years ago, he retired, and that 21 years flew by. We were lucky enough that the Navy sent us to some pretty cool places. And so I really sort of embraced the military lifestyle as an adventure. I found, for me anyway, that was kind of how I stayed positive through the experience. I was very intentional as a military spouse about connecting to other military spouses and connecting to my community and really helping my kids kind of do the same thing. And our kids now are 13 and a half and 15. So we are in full on teenage years. Anybody that's listening that has young girls, buckle up for middle school. So far, high school gets a lot better. So
just got to get through it.
Yeah, you just got to kind of grin and bear it a little bit, and I promise you'll get through it. But she's thriving in high school now, which is amazing. We spend a lot of our time on the weekends traveling for club volleyball. So we're definitely a volleyball family, and also theater family. So we're kind of in that phase of life. I also find myself, Hannah, very much, I'm kind of in this space of like, oh my gosh, I only have 4 birthdays left,
Yeah.
with her in the house. Quick pivot on that. This past year, her birthday is in October. My boss had asked me, hey, Rachelle, can you come speak at this conference for me? And immediately I said yes, because I usually come from a place of yes.
Yeah.
And then realized that it was going to be on my daughter's birthday. And, and luckily she's a big fan of the 10-10-10 rule, which is a way of saying when you're making a decision, kind of going through the rubric of how is this going to impact me in, 10 days? How is this going to impact me in 10 months and in 10 years?
Mhm.
Um, it might be 10 minutes, 10
Yeah.
months,
Honestly.
but it's a, and luckily she sets an example for that. Anyway, so I did that. And I said, I can't fly to Orlando and get back. I'll miss both breakfast and dinner. And I really want to be home on her birthday. And luckily she understood. So
Love
anyway,
it.
sorry, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I am full on really trying to appreciate these teenage years because everybody tells me they go really fast.
I can only
Um,
imagine.
so, yeah. And that so far that has been very true. Professionally, I work as the senior director in the Adecco Group US Foundation. We are the corporate foundation for the Adecco Group. Some of your listeners might be more familiar with that brand or that company, that name, the Adecco Group. We have been consistently recognized over the last 15 years or so as being a top 10 military spouse and top military friendly company, which makes me so proud. And I can tell you that we walk the talk
Mhm.
when it comes to being military friendly. I am sort of the shining example of that, in that I have worked for this wonderful company for 20 years,
Wow.
which, makes me a bit of a unicorn in
Yes.
our community, because not a lot of us can say that. Within the 20 years I've been here, I've moved 8 times with the military, twice overseas. And, I kept thinking every time at every turn, I'm like, this is it. They're going to let me go. We're going to Belgium. What? No.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, we figured it out. And so I know the value of working for a company that has legs and has a big heart and mind around this movement. And I am extremely fortunate to be the leader of that movement. So I lead all of our military programming across the Adecco Group, so across our 3 brands, Adecco, LHH, and ACOTUS. And that includes everything that we do as a company, not only to employ military talent, but also educate military talent. And that includes all of our upskilling and reskilling programs, including It's My Turn, which we're going to talk about. And then also everything we do to engage the military community from a philanthropic standpoint or through volunteerism. And so it is, I'm going to tell you, I have the privilege of working from home. And when I come down my stairs every day to sit at my desk, I I have such joy and such appreciation and gratitude and love and passion for what I do. I get to create programs every day that give right back to the military community, and I don't take it for granted. And I love it. And of course, one of the latest programs that I was able to create, a career development program for the veteran military spouse community. It's My Turn. That's kind of what I'm excited about and working on right now.
Yeah.
Was that too long, Hannah? That was a
No, that's
long.
perfect. I mean, every time I bring people on, like even when they're in these professional settings, I love and oftentimes require that you're a member of the community because I feel like, we know this community wants to hear what works from people who are living it. And so I think it's great to hear all aspects of your life because now people will know, oh, she really knows. She's living it. And so now they're really going to listen to you, right? They're going to listen to you about this program. So let's hear about it because I loved when we met and I got to hear kind of how your family's transition out of active duty family life really led you to this focus and kind
Yeah.
of almost, even though you're at the same company, your own kind of career shift within it by joining the ranks of the veteran spouse community. So tell us kind of how this is personal for you and how it came to be that you created It's My Turn.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that. This is probably going to be another long answer, Hannah. But to really understand the inspiration behind It's My Turn, you kind of got to go back to the beginning of my career. I mentioned I have been working here for 20 years. In February of 2020, excuse me, February of 2005, not 2025, 2005, my husband and I had just PCSed to DC. And when we moved there, I decided, if we're going to get stationed in DC, then I'm going to kind of pursue this dream job I had at the time of working on Capitol Hill. Don't judge me, Hannah. It was very different back then.
No, I don't know if you know this, but I went to school in DC. I was on that path myself for a time, so no judgment.
Okay. Some of your listeners might be judging me for that. It was 20 years ago.
Different times.
Yeah. I had done an internship in college with a senator, and I thought, if I ever go to DC, I'm going to want to kind of leverage that experience. And so, when we moved, I had been to graduate school. I had been in pharmaceutical sales. I had lived overseas and taught English. I mean, I was young, but I thought I really had it going on. And I was surprised how hard it was for me to find, a low paying staff job. And so it was actually my husband's suggestion. He said, hey, when I was in college, I worked for a staffing company, as a kind of temporarily in the summer. Why don't you go look for an opportunity there while you're figuring it out? And so legitimately pulled out the phone book. Yes, the Yellow Pages.
Wow.
And the first company I came to alphabetically was Adecco. And so I called them up, got an interview, and long story short is they hired me the same day to be an in-house recruiter. And, I didn't know really what that was. I honestly had no idea what I was getting myself into, and never in a million years thought, oh, I'm going to be with this company, for 20 years. But luckily for me, about 5 months into taking that temp job, our CEO at that time, who was a retired one-star general, hired his old Army buddy to stand up a government affairs division inside our company. And that man needed an EA, and I absolutely was not interested. Like, I was very adamant. I wanted to do government relations. I didn't want to be submitting expense reports and travel budgets. And when we first met, I really kind of, I was full of myself, and I told him as much. And I said to him, hey, I'm only interested if this is an opportunity really for me to learn from you. And he assured me that it would be. He wanted to expand and do a lot of things with the department or with the program. And so I said yes. And that was really my first lesson at the company, that about asking for what you want, or the importance of asking for what you want. And I think he appreciated the little moxie that I had. I came
that goes a long way.
Yeah, and said, listen, I know what I'm capable of. I know I can learn. And if this is an opportunity to do that, great. And if not, let me know now. And so I think he appreciated my directness too. And so, I took this unlikely detour into an executive assistant role, but I used every single second to my advantage. I mean, I went on every Hill meeting he would let me go on. I volunteered for every project. I attended internal meetings way above my pay grade. And I really turned what I thought at the time was a step back in my career into a little career rocket ship. Now, sadly, a couple years later, when the recession hit, I'll never forget this, Hannah. We were sitting in our offices in DC, and our chief of human resources had come to visit. And I was, of course, none the wiser about why she was there. But after she met with my boss, she came over to my office. She sat across from me and she said, Rachelle, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but we had to let Larry go. And the one thing that he asked was that we take care of you. So what do you want to do? And I leaned across the table I looked her dead in the face, Hannah, and I said, I want his job.
Mm-hmm.
And I was serious as a heart attack. And I didn't want the pay. I didn't want the fancy title. I really didn't care about any of that. I knew we had started to build something. I was really excited about the work and I wanted to continue it. So our CEO flew me to New York. I interviewed with every C-suite executive, one-on-one. And by the end of the day, which was very intimidated. By the way, like, you
Yes.
know, and by the end of the day, they offered me the opportunity. And the reason they gave me the chance, I'm convinced, is because my boss took care of me. And I mentioned earlier he was retired at 06. I think that's one of the things that really great military leaders do is they take care of their people. And this was certainly an example of somebody saying, "Hey, I'm getting fired, but I'm going to make sure that this company looks out for you." And if he hadn't done that, Hannah, I would not be here today.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah.
also, that was kind of the second time in my career. I had mentioned this lesson that came up for me early on, which was, ask for what you want. That was kind of a second time in my career that I was brave enough to say, I want to do his job. And I know full well you're not going to, pay me the same or give me the same rank. And that's understandable, but just give me a chance to continue to do this work and let me see what impact I can make. So I just want your listeners to hear that. Like, be brave, lean in, and ask for what you want. What happened in my career was I think I started to develop a reputation for doing that and being willing to do that. And then eventually senior leaders started asking me to lead stuff, which is a great place to be. And in 2010, I was asked to lead our Olympic sponsorship program, where we were helping Olympians and Paralympians transition from sport to the professional working world. I had a team that was reporting to me, and really loved that, loved the opportunity to grow my career. I had a new boss, of course, at that time, and my career was like, it was on the upward trajectory, and it really had been those, the first 5 years or so that I was working. And then, dun dun dun, I had babies, Hannah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you may or may not know what that means. You do know.
I do. I
Uh,
do. Got two babies.
Working, that every woman knows what that means if you're working, and military spouses especially knows what that means if you're working. Um, and I will say this, like, let me big qualifier here. We loved our military service as a family. I kind of said that a little bit earlier. And the reality is my husband's career kept progressing. He kept getting promoted. Every few years, we would have a promotion ceremony and he would put on the next rank, and so proud of him, obviously 100%. And I don't say this in a woe is me kind of way, because I was very proud to serve my country in my own way
Yeah.
by supporting his career. But I was the full-time caretaker of our two kids. He was deploying all the time. I was raising them by myself without family support. Everybody listening can relate to that, because I know you've all been there. But I sacrificed my career for his. And that really is the enduring story, I think, of the military spouse. And you set that up beautifully before. So when he decided to, and let me say this, there were plenty of opportunities for me to take different roles or to be promoted, but I just didn't put myself up for those opportunities. I knew that I could not move wherever the Adecco Group wanted me to move. I had to move wherever the Navy said we needed to move where we had to move. So and luckily I was still doing important work, and I was loving what I was doing, and I was working my face off, because I knew someday that was going to pay off. And when he, came to me and said, "Hey, remember how we said we're going to do this until it doesn't make sense anymore?" It wasn't making sense, like I mentioned earlier, for our kiddos. And he said, "I think it's time we retire." And that is when I turned to him and I said those three little words that I have heard from so many spouses, too many to count, over the last 20 years. And that was, "It's my turn."
Mhm.
And he knew exactly what I meant. And luckily, I married a wonderfully supportive man who said, "Listen, you have sacrificed so much of your career for mine. Like step on the gas, you go. I am here to support you." Luckily, I also have a wonderfully supportive boss who, when I went to her and said, "Listen, we're done. We're getting out of the military. No more moving. We're going to have a little stability in our life. And I am ready. I am ready for more, and I am ready to take on more responsibility. I want to be promoted."
Yeah.
She said to me, "Rachelle, I have been waiting for you to come to me. I knew you had more gas in the tank." It gives me goosebumps actually when I say that, because um, first of all, I know not everybody is so lucky to have such a supportive boss like that. Um, but as you know from a little bit of my story, I've sort of kind of known for asking for what I want. So it was only natural that I would go to her all those years later and say that. And what I'll say is, within 6 months of having that conversation with her, I was promoted into really, what has become my dream job. I was just promoted again earlier this year. And with that, decided to really create a program to help veteran spouses take control of their careers the way that I gained control of mine. So you said that this was personal to me. You're absolutely right. It could not be more personal.
I truly love to hear your story and even elements I hadn't heard before, because I think like when we get into talking about the meat and potatoes of this program, to hear that you, this person who created it, like are, lived it and got to see the benefits of um you know uh, that perspective that you're talking about, what you're known for. I imagine elements of helping other spouses feel equally as empowered to ask for what, to know what, to figure out what they want and ask for what they want.
Yep.
um and I never like to make anything a gender thing, but we also know that most of us military and veteran spouses are women,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not used generally not used to asking for what we want, demanding what we want for a million reasons. And so I
No.
think it's really powerful to hear how you've been empowered that way and have seen what can come of that when you do that.
Mhm.
I think it just makes like the fact that you made this and what people can get from it like so much more like real, right?
Yeah, we all need to be reminded of that. And I'm so glad I could be here to do that for you or anybody that's listening.
Anybody that's listening. And again, I made it a gender thing, but it isn't, like everyone should figure out what it is they want and go get it. Wherever you are in your life too. Um, I think we've talked about and danced around some of these things, especially in your own personal experience. But for maybe anyone who's listening that's like, okay, I don't get it. I hope civilians listen to this podcast too. Like, why is this so hard? Why are they struggling to stay employed or underemployed? Because I feel like that is such a huge, and
Mhm.
you spoke to it, right, of the time when you were having babies, right? You're like, I knew I could do more, but you know, I had to be the caretaker for my kids, so that limited me. So can you just speak to, whether you're speaking to us, the people who get it, or the people who maybe don't, what are some of those challenges, both from the active duty side and when we're transitioning out, that have created this problem of unemployment and underemployment?
Mm. Well, oh gosh. Okay, so I'm going to enter my soapbox era for a second.
Let's do it.
um, Let me start with just a couple of the statistics to sort of frame this discussion. And you mentioned one already in the intro, which is spouses still face a 22% unemployment rate. And that may have, it has budged maybe a couple of percentage points, but not really dipped big enough. Is certainly in the kind of way that matches all the work that has been
Right.
done the last 20 years on this topic. And so I think that that's so fascinating. Like, why isn't this budging in a much bigger way? When veteran unemployment, for instance, was really high during like the 2010s, corporate America and Department of Defense to some degree, the administration at that time said, corporate America, come on, like know better, do better. We got to get these young men and women off unemployment payrolls. Unemployment is way too high for them. You got to give them a chance. And then all of these wonderful initiatives, many of which we've been part of, were created to solve this problem. And we did a really darn good job of solving it. And veteran unemployment is, has been consistently very, very low for quite a long time. So I'll say that part of the reason that still persists is we probably haven't given it the same attention that we have veteran unemployment. So that's first and foremost.
And isn't that true with everything? Insert whatever topic, spouse, family versus veteran. Yeah.
100%. And it's 10 times worse when, as an active duty military spouse, then you transition from being an active duty spouse to a veteran military spouse, which is why I created It's My Turn. There are very few programs and none that currently exist. And we'll get into this in just a minute, but in the full 360 format that ours does.
Yeah.
It's like once you're a duty spouse, sayonara, like good luck, Godspeed, see you later. But you also mentioned unemployment rate, or excuse me, underemployment, and that hovers around 88%. And I think a lot of not only active duty spouses, but even the civilian population don't understand that. And for me, one of the things that's even worse than that is that active duty military spouses earn about 38% less than our civilian counterparts. And a lot of that has to do with interruption in jobs, right? So we have career gaps, a lot of that also has to do with being chronically underemployed. So most military families need 2 incomes to survive. Not all, some figure it out without having to do that, but most have to work. And there's, of course, some of us like me who genuinely want to work.
Yeah.
But in the absence of finding like the job that actually fits your interests, your values, your skill sets, and all those things, you end up in a situation where you're just like, I'm, living in the middle of nowhere, USA, and I'm going to take whatever job I can get, if that's sacking groceries or, being a receptionist. Not that there's anything wrong with that work. There's dignity, of course, in all work.
Yes.
But you take jobs that don't necessarily align with what you really want to do. And that, quite frankly, as an active duty spouse, feels like a flipping luxury.
Yeah.
And so you take what you can get, and that's sort of like, I think you start to devalue yourself because you are taking what you can get because you have to work. And then that cycle just repeats itself every single time in PCS. And then you look back and you have this 20-year career of odd jobs that got you an income, but didn't necessarily culminate into 20 years of experience that you now can look back on and go, okay, now I have a pretty good plan for what I want to do now that I'm not constrained by military. Again, that's what we're trying to do with It's My Turn.
Yeah.
Excuse me, with It's My Turn. So I just want to point out the very realistic nature of needing that second income. And when you throw childcare into the mix,
Mm-hmm.
and the difficulty in not only finding childcare, but finding affordable childcare, finding quality childcare, I mean, it just makes it so hard for the spouse to work, despite the number that actually want to work. So I think there are a lot of factors. There are a lot of factors that go into that. I remember when we were stationed in Colorado back in 2008, and I remember speaking before the state senate in Colorado back then about this issue, about underemployment. And we were back then sort of, I use the word lobbying very loosely, but talking to the Senate about state licensing issues. And we've come a long way, even with state licensing and state licensing reciprocity, still work to be done there. It's just like, it's just been so slow, Hannah. We take a couple of steps forward, which is amazing. And then maybe a couple of steps back. So anyway, I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy, but I think that those are very real factors, and all of those things impact us when we become veteran military spouses. We've got less money in our bank accounts for retirement. You know, it just all those factors impact us, and so when you become when at that point in your life, whether you served 4 years or you served 30 years on active duty, when you get out, and it's not for everybody, but for the military spouses that say, you know what, I am finally ready to really do work that connects with who I am, and I don't know what that is.
Right.
We are kind of that soft place for the veteran military spouse to land, to say, okay, come on home. We're gonna we're gonna work with you and walk you through kind of how to do that work, to figure out, kind of where places that you can kind of go next. So if you are hearing this and you are feeling like, I have not served my career in the best way and I want to work, I want to be out there, then this might be a program for you.
Yeah, so I mean, like, let's go there. Like, tell us more about it, and specifically, I mean, tell us everything you want us to know about it. But what I really just like loved, that I, to your point, kind of haven't seen elsewhere, right? It seems like it's really filling an important gap and speaking to what you just shared, which is like, think about those active duty spouses who maybe for 4 years, maybe for 10, 20, 30, were kind of caught in this cycle of like unemployment, underemployment, and how that makes them feel and how
Mm,
that translates to their worth.
mm,
Um, I feel like what I have seen and heard about your program is it's not just, oh, let's get you in front of the right people and get you the right, resume skills and the right interview skills. And it's about more about employment and self-discovery. So I want to hear all about it, but I really want to hear about that because I think that's what makes it so unique and powerful.
yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, I will tell veteran spouses when they come to our info session, or when they email me or want to talk to me about this program. If you are looking for a job and that's it, like, we're a company full of recruiters. I'm
Mhm.
happy to connect you to a recruiter, but this program isn't for you. If you know where you're going, what you want, and all that, amazing. Like, love it. Hope you've done the self-discovery work. But this is really for somebody that really wants to, as I say, kind of get to know thyself. Let me back up and say one more thing, actually, kind of going back to your previous question around unemployment and underemployment, and also as a setup to why I think our program is so important. In addition to help really unearthing your own worth, one of the things that military spouses, and I love us for this so much, is we are some of the most resourceful people I've ever met. And
Mhm.
how that manifests, I mean, it manifests as a form of survival, I think,
Yes.
as an active duty spouse. But in terms of like education, we are very, very good at taking advantage of free education and certifications and upskilling and reskilling. You tell a military spouse that I'm going to give you this, college or program for free. Like, we are all over it, right? I love it. And we don't always sit back and say, how does this really fit into my plan? How does this really fit into the person that Hannah is? And does this make sense? I kind of actually am known for talking spouses specifically, sometimes veterans too, um, more out of our programs than I am into them, because we don't often take the time to do this gut check, and this self check with ourselves. Like, why am I really doing this? What is motivating me to spend the time? Is it just to grab the free certification, or is this going to lead to something meaningful? Do you know what I mean? Like, does that resonate with you, Hannah?
It does. Randomly, it makes me think about SMART goal setting, but which is like my favorite one. I can't even like, is this relevant? Like
Yes,
you shouldn't
exactly.
do something because someone else thinks you should do it or because it seems like it's the right thing. Like, if you're going to make this investment, it should be for you and you should know where it's taking you.
I'll give you a quick example. We for several years, I led a upskilling and reskilling program specifically for military spouse, active duty military spouses to get their CompTIA A+ certification. And a lot of military spouses during COVID were coming to me and saying, hey, I really want to break into IT, but I don't have experience. I know that's a growth opportunity. Like, how would I start? And so I said, well, this is kind of, working on in a help desk kind of role, which back then a lot of those roles were remote, less so now. That really seemed like a good foundational, step. So I created this program, partnered with another company, gave them the education, the platform, got them certified. And I remember being in an interview when I was vetting applicants, and this one military spouse, I said, well, tell me, why you are interested in this program. What are you hoping to do, once you obtain your CompTIA A+ certification? And she's like, and then just went on like this 3-minute tangent about how excited she is about HR.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like scratching my head, and I said, darling, your face just lit up telling me about employee relations. Honey, you don't need your CompTIA A certificate. Like, what? Don't waste the next 12 weeks getting this certification just because it's available to you. Like, you don't need to do this. And I kind of gave her some advice and some things that she should be doing. And she is doing exactly that work right now. And sometimes and I am that person. So if anybody listening to this, if you need that person in your life that's like, no, don't do that. Do this. I am your cheerleader. Okay, let me get back to the program. So kind of I'm going to kind of give you a quick overview, if you will, Hannah, and then if you'll let me kind of break down some of the components of it, you might have some follow-up questions about the components. But
Perfect.
If you take It's My Turn as a whole, it really is a career transition program. And what we are hoping to do at the end of the day is really empower the veteran military spouse who is either unemployed or underemployed, like we talked about, or maybe you're working, but you really want to pivot into a new career, and you've been doing something that you're not really excited about anymore, and you're just not sure what that pivot looks like. So we really want to help you unlock a profession that more closely aligns with your values. And we want to make sure that you're, pursuing that. I always like to say, from a place of purposeful ambition. So kind of going back to my, story about the woman that wanted to be in employee relations, and, why are you doing what you're doing, essentially? So one great thing about the program is that it's free. We just said spouses love free stuff. This is a program that we give away to the veteran spouse population for free. It is a 12-week program. So my ask is that if you, after listening to today's podcast, you're interested in this program, make sure that you have 12 weeks, that you are coming with a lot of willingness to be vulnerable, to ask questions about yourself, to really dig into yourself every week for 12 weeks. Yeah. Each of our sessions last about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes or so. We do meet virtually, so you'll meet spouses all over the country. The sessions are facilitated by a certified coach from LHH. That's one of the companies underneath the Adecco Group family. And we talk about a lot of really great stuff. And it was very important to me that we do this in a group setting. I have seen doing upskilling and reskilling programs over the last many years that our learning outcomes, they increase in community. I kind of like to call it people magic. And so it's, and oh, by the way, this, Hannah, like everybody, even my introverts, are looking for community. Yes. It may look differently, the way they seek it out or the way they want to have it, but they want to know each other. It's one of the greatest outcomes that we get, like in the responses from people that participated in the first year was, wow, not only did I expand my network professionally, but also I just met some really amazing veteran military spouses who I am friends with. We've even had people go on vacation together, for goodness sake. So I'm I'm really proud of that. So we really do focus on that. Another benefit of a program is that, and this is something else that our participants really love, is that in addition to the facilitated weekly workshops, they also get 2 one-on-one sessions with a career coach. I just talked to somebody who is in this space. She works for Hiring Our Heroes. And she said by far that was her favorite part of the program, because working with somebody, by the way, she's kind of in a role where she's constantly serving others. And now she's having that one-on-one time with a career coach, which if you pay for that, out of your own pocket, Hannah, I don't know if you've ever done that or looked into this, it can get costly. So I'm proud that I can provide that service on top of the weekly workshops. And then they also get some other really cool stuff. We can get to that. I'll get to that in just a second. But essentially, it's 12 weeks virtual workshops. It's a lot of interactive work that we do together in that hour and a half time frame. And then everybody gets a one-on-one career coach. Do you want me to kind of go through some of the steps, kind of that the stages, if you will, that we kind of go through in the program,
like
Hannah?
really thinking through, like, I'm the person listening, and yeah, what makes this difference? What am I getting out of this? I think really being able to highlight those things is so helpful.
Okay. So the first, you mentioned this phrase before, and I think we talked about this not on the podcast today, but in previous conversations. The very first stage of this program is around self-discovery. This is probably my favorite stage of the program, and it requires a lot of introspection, because it's very much about finding kind of the intersection of what's in your head and what's in your heart, and how do you relate that to the world of work. So we do a lot of assessments in the first stage, whether that's on assessing your values, what your interests are, what motivates you. That's an interesting one for me. And I love seeing some of the aha moments. I'm thinking of one in particular. I'll just use her first name, Kim, who went through the first cohort of It's My Turn. And her biggest aha was during this self-discovery phase, where she said, Rachelle, what I realize is what motivates me today is not what and she's a veteran and also a veteran military spouse. She said, what motivates me today is certainly not what motivated me when I left the Army and when I started working at my current company. And so going through and doing that exercise, I was like, wow, and ultimately, this is super cool. Ultimately, what she realized was she was really second guessing whether or not she was working for the right organization. And at the end of the program, what she realized was, it's not that I'm on the wrong bus. It's just that I have the wrong seat on the bus, meaning she was working in a role that was not fulfilling, did not match her motivators, did not match her values. She was not really interested in it any longer, but she's hyper creative, has a super cool side hustle, and said, if I can get into a more creative role within this organization, I would stay here.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. So she was able to move internally at her company into a role that she's really thriving at and doing wonderfully at. And she came to a lot of those realizations when she was in this full on, career exploration, kind of step. And let me just say this, because I do think this is worth pointing out. I think that very, very often we skip this step and we go straight into looking for a job without doing that introspective work that ultimately really does, or it can lead to better career satisfaction and then value alignment in your work. In fact, I think that this is the reason, and I have said this publicly so many times, I do believe this is the reason that so many veterans leave their first job out of the military within the first year. If you look at the stats of what that is, it's very, very high.
Yeah.
And I think they get and rightfully so, they get so worried about not having that paycheck that they either do the easy button and they stay in the government job or work for a contractor doing the same thing they did in the military. And then they're like bummed out in a year, because they didn't really take the time to go through this work. So I'm overemphasizing this just so you all know we really do peel back the layers internally. And the reason for that is we want to figure out, what kind of, well, in terms of doing career exploration, right, you really kind of have to do that.
Mhm.
I mentioned that we leverage assessments to do that. We also have an AI tool called Career Canvas that will assess or suggest some career paths based on maybe what you've done in the past work-wise or what you want to do next. One of the things I love that it does, it'll assess some of your skills gaps. That comes in really, really handy in stage 2, which is our grow stage. And in that stage, we really create a plan that focuses on developing your skills gaps.
Yeah.
So, you may find out that, like, hey, I really want to pursue, data analytics, and but you don't have a certificate or you don't have a lot of education to back that up. We'll kind of help you come up with a plan to figure out, how do I get the education or the upskilling and reskilling needed to support that career path. One of the other things that I didn't mention this, but one of the other things that all of our participants get is they get access to our online, I'm blanking on the name of it, right, Career Studio, our online platform that it gives you access to so many wonderful tools and resources. And one of those is LinkedIn Learning, which is great. When you were an active duty military spouse, you may have had a LinkedIn Learning license. You get that for free every time you move. And then, of course, a year after you're out of service, veteran military spouses don't get that anymore. So you're going to get access back to that in our program and through our platform, which is really great. And then our third stage is what we call the branding stage. I do love this part too, because we really focus on creating really strong, compelling stories that help employers understand who you are and what you're capable of, like what you have done and what you can do. And I love this because we really lean in to help veteran spouses evaluate and recognize what I think is their own unique brilliance. Hannah, I think sometimes we have a hard time believing that what comes so naturally to us, could ever, like, we would never use the word genius to describe ourselves, because we're like, we were born that way, or that's just or a superpower, right? It's like, oh, that just comes from within. But as a group of veteran military spouses, we have this beautiful lived experience that it doesn't always look very unique among us, but it's outlandishly unique to the rest of the world. When I say, listen, you guys, when you're picking up and restarting your life every 2, 3, however many years, but you look to your right and your left and your neighbors and you go, well, everybody does that, but they don't. It really, and all the things that are required for you to be successful in managing those transitions in your life, and and moving, they don't feel exceptional, but they should. So we teach spouses to fully examine their power skills. We used to call those soft skills, but soft skills got a rebrand, you all, if you didn't know. They are power skills. We should speak to them as power skills. And so, through storytelling, we want employers to understand really the depth of your value. You have to believe it first. We talked about the importance of self-worth before. We're going to make sure that you feel good and that you ask for what you want when you leave.
Yeah.
when you leave our program. And then in the next stage, that's really the prep stage. You mentioned this before. This is the stage that a lot of other programs have. That's the build your resume, make sure you have a strong LinkedIn, like kind of all those little ankle biter tasks that you need to be good at when you're looking for a job. Like, they are necessary. And I think this, Hannah, one of the things that's good about that stage is I have a lot of people that will say, I knew some of this stuff, but I needed to update it, I needed to modernize, or I learned things that I didn't know before. So I think we are providing value there. Even if you think you got it, it's worth it, I think, to revisit. That's something that really should be fluid anyway, and you should be honing those skills and updating all the time. And then the very last phase is the land phase. And that's where I say we really like to land the plane. And we teach everybody how to utilize their network, And we help all of our participants connect to employers. So whether that's recruiters that we're connecting them to in our business, or sharing my personal network or each other's personal network, ultimately the goal is that they figure out what they want to do next professionally, and then we help them. We help them get there.
I love it. And I'm actually, I love phase three about the brand because, I'm thinking about a lot of what we're talking about from the perspective of someone who hires. We're hiring right now. And phase four, like you're saying, like, yeah, it's the stuff we all do. But to me, it's so different once you've gone through to do that stuff once you've gone through the first three phases. That's going to be a
Yes.
different resume. That's going to be a different cover letter. That's going to, like, because of what you know about yourself and how you want to portray yourself. And so I think, because everyone listening who's never hired anybody before, like, I'm lucky if I get a cover letter, right? I might just get a resume. And I'm someone who knows all this stuff that you're talking about and is looking for those military spouses because I want to hire them the most. But sometimes I don't know, and I don't get someone selling themselves, right? All I get is, a resume with a bunch of gaps in it and me wondering if they're a military spouse, but also like, I wanted you to sell yourself to me. I wanted to hear all that stuff, the power skills. And so I really love hearing about the trajectory because even the stuff that has to happen, it's so important because that's what the employer is seeing, who's not going to know anything else about you.
Yep. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So you gotta know a lot about you and say what you want to say about yourself so that they invite you for that interview.
Yeah, I know I kind of said this already. It is emotional, and it is very moving for me when I can see a spouse. Um, when I see a spouse, I use this phrase often, kind of move from anxious to anchored
Mm,
in who they are. And that might sound a little hippy dippy to some
no,
people
not to me.
listening, but it's really important, and just I think just for a little bit of contentment in life as a human being, forget the spouse part, but just really kind of settling into, and it's a lifelong thing that we do. And by the way, I didn't say this before, but some people listening might go 12 weeks. Goodness gracious, that sounds like a long time. A lot of the things we're talking about here are things that you should be looking at within yourself your whole life.
Yes.
There has to be a beginning and an end to the program, but the introspective part piece of who you are and how you're shifting and changing and moving as a person, this is work that you should be doing forever and ever, especially as you grow professionally throughout your career. I mean, we saw it in the example I gave earlier about the participant who said, hey, what motivates me today didn't motivate me 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. And
Yeah, we change.
duh, like, I need to take that into consideration when I'm thinking about what I want to commit my time to.
Mhm, mhm. And I know, like, naturally throughout talking about this, you've kind of shared some of like that story of that spouse and different impact. But I think that's really meaningful. Are there other things and experiences that stand out that you've heard or seen from participants in these first couple of cohorts?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing I'm super proud to report is, for anybody that is familiar with an NPS score, it's called the Net Promoter Score. In we do like a pre program survey or coaching survey and a post program survey. And in the post survey, we ask participants, would you recommend this program to another veteran military spouse? We have 100% NPS score, which is kind of unheard of. And so, not to sound too braggadocious about that, but I am really proud that the content, the purpose is very much resonating with the participants. That also tells me we've done a pretty good job of vetting the right candidates for this program. So I would brag on that a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, Also, just in our first cohort, we just wrapped our second cohort. And so I don't have data on them just yet. But in our first cohort alone, we welcomed 25 spouses into the program. 21 of the 25 already are working. which is incredible. And a couple of them have pulled themselves out of the workforce due to different reasons.
Mhm.
So whether we help them get the job or they got the job themselves, that is a really great number and a really great statistic. So I'm super proud of that too. I think another thing is, and I think we mentioned this a little bit, we do spend a lot of time cultivating the community piece of this program. And that is some of the biggest feedback that we've received is we love the community aspect of it here. So much so, I got that feedback so much that how hungry people are for it,
Yeah.
that I'm really excited to, I think I can announce it to you today. I will be launching an alumni program for our It's My Turn cohorts,
Nice.
and creating more opportunity for our participants to connect with other groups that have gone through the program from a personal standpoint, but certainly from a professional standpoint too. And I've got a lot of really cool things coming up around what that alumni program is going to look like. So really wanting, figuring out ways to even better dig into the community. One of the things that we offer in the program, we don't require this, although I'm going to change it a little bit for cohort 3. So this actually will be a requirement. We put together accountability groups. I started out doing partners and then we moved accountability groups in the second cohort. Our forcing function kind of, Hannah, to like make sure you're keeping each other accountable, yourself accountable, asking questions and continuing to do the learning outside of our weekly sessions.
Mhm.
And that was very, 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 very well received, which I love. One thing also I didn't mention, it's just a small thing, but there is a digital workbook that we give everybody that's kind of where you record a lot of your reflections and where you do your homework. And so that's just another little value add that participants get in the program. And you have that obviously forever, but that's also used in the accountability groups. We're going to actually in cohort 3 require everybody to do a little presentation at the very end of the program to talk about lessons learned and things like that within the accountability group. So not only are we really forcing you to get to know yourself, but you're going to know other people in this group. We prioritize learning in a safe environment, and just really feeling protected and seen and heard and held, and supported throughout this journey. So those are all things that I'm proud of. Employment, people wanting to come back, recommending it to other people, and then just the hunger to continue to learn and to continue to connect with each other. I think we've built something really special, Hannah.
It
And
sure
I'm
sounds like it. It really does.
pretty
And
excited.
you're singing our love language when you talk about community. So like if you're listening and you're a VSN participant who's been in any of our groups and been like, yeah, this is it. This is the same thing, but for self-discovery for your career trajectory. Like that is why I was like so excited to learn about this and have you come on and share this, is because this speaks our language. This is what we're all about, but we don't do the career, like that's not our expertise and we don't need it to be, right? So, but the
Right.
core values of what you've put together, and your passion for it is just like perfectly aligned with who we are as an organization as well. So I love it.
I love it too. That's why I tracked you down, girl.
Mhm. Yes, I know, I know. And I'm so glad we're finally here. And so, okay, let's transition to, if it's not February 2026 when you're listening to this, okay, this is the time specific part of this podcast. Um, so I'm listening. It is February 2026, and obviously we hope cohorts go on forever. But let's talk about what you have upcoming. I'm listening and I'm like, I need this. I want to be a part of it. How do I get involved? And if everyone listening, if she's sharing links, they will be in the comments in our YouTube. Or if you see this on social, we'll make sure to link to all the appropriate things. But how do I get involved, and kind of like what is our timeline for this upcoming cohort?
So glad you asked. So applications launched January 20th and they actually closed February 18th. So I know that that's a short window for those of you that are listening to the podcast, if you're listening to it live. We also, by the time this podcast airs, we will have already held our info session on February 4th, but we will be posting the recording of that info session on our website. So if you missed it on February 4th, you can go back and listen and learn more about it. I'll make sure, again, like Hannah said, we'll have a link in the chat to our website where all this information will be updated. Also, a link to the application will be updated. Also, I am happy to include a link to my LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, ask me more questions, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn there. Also, you may want to just connect with me in general. In March, I talked a little bit earlier about upskilling and reskilling programs that we offer in the foundation and that I lead. We have a really big tech scholarship called the Service Scholarship that we run the month of March. And so that's coming up. So lots of great reasons to follow us in the foundation and also to follow me. So I will provide you with all that information as well. And I certainly hope that you will strongly consider joining us for cohort 3 and that you'll put in your application.
Awesome. And then is the intent, I know everything, the future is the future, but is the goal, or like how frequently in an ideal world are you guys offering these cohorts?
So right now, Hannah, we're only offering it publicly twice a year. I really have to figure out how to scale this program because the demand for it has been very clear. We receive, 4 times as many applications as we can take. So that's really will be a focus of mine next year, is figuring out how do I serve more veteran military spouses in this way. One of the things that makes this program unique, the secret sauce is really in the community, but it's also in the high touch way that we are serving people. And it's just very hard to do that in really large groups. We get the impact we get because there's so much handholding and one-on-one service. So I've got to figure that out, Hannah. But as of right now, we'll minimum be offering it twice in 2026.
So if you miss, we hope you don't, but if you miss and you're interested or it doesn't feel like the right time,
Yes.
still go look at it, still follow Rachelle,
Yeah.
Follow the pages.
Yep.
So you know when the
Yep.
next one is
Exactly.
happening. And then, I think there have been so many amazing, like little kind of tidbits that I've taken from this, just as, a veteran spouse on my own career journey. And as someone who hires and supports people in their workplace. But I always love to end podcasts by just kind of asking for if no one got, if our listeners were to get nothing from this, right? I mean, they won't, but like, other than what you're about to say, right? Like, what is the major takeaway, whether it's about my turn and getting involved in this program specifically, or just anyone who might be listening who is on some career journey? What do you want to make sure they hear from you? No
I
pressure.
would say, it's never too late to be what you might have been. And that development is a gift. And so I want to encourage you to give yourself the gift of time by really getting to know yourself. We talked about some of the outcomes that we focus on in the program, and one that I didn't mention is increasing feelings of self-confidence.
Yes.
And I often say that confidence, it really requires 3 things. It requires permission to exist, community, because it's the safest place to practice it, and curiosity. And we are looking for bravery, you all. We are not looking for perfection in our program. So take a chance on yourself and join us this year. Grow your confidence, know who you are, and it's never too late to be what you might have been.
I love that. It isn't. And you don't want to spend your whole adult working life in something that doesn't fulfill you. So take the leap and figure out, what really does, because especially with our community, we're a service-minded community. And so it can get really easy to get caught up in something that you're doing for a paycheck or because of all these factors that we've considered. And, you deserve more than that.
Well said, my friend.
You as well. Well, Rachelle, I am so glad this was overdue. I'm glad we could get it in time for, hopefully to get some straggler applications in for you, but we will make sure that, yeah, like I said, if you're listening to this well after the fact, they're still out there. So, check them out. And then also just I appreciate just the reminders, even if this isn't the program, right? Or if this isn't the right time for somebody, there's a lot of gems in what you shared. And I appreciate you for sharing how your own journey has, really led to this amazing program that so many others get to take advantage of. So I appreciate you coming and telling us all about yourself and all about the great work that you're doing.
Oh, and it's led me to you and to the Veteran Spouse Network. And I couldn't be more excited, Hannah, to now get to know you and to work with you. And such a joy to be with you today. Thank you again so much for the invitation to be here. I appreciate it very personally and professionally. I appreciate it very much. And I hope that I will get to see you hopefully very soon.
Yes. This is just the beginning. And we hope it's just the beginning for you all as well. So if you're listening, thank you for being here. And I always say, see you next month, and it's always wrong. You will hear us next month. Thanks for listening. Thanks again for joining us on the Veteran Spouse Network podcast, brought to you in collaboration with Coming Home Well. We thank you for listening today and hope today's session left you feeling a little more connected or gave you some insight into the experiences of our military and veteran families. Don't forget to check us out at veteranspousenetwork.org to learn more about how our military and veteran families can receive the support they deserve.